Welcome to Inside America's Cup, where we go under the surface of one of the most secretive and competitive sporting events in the world and try and find the things that separate winning from losing. Today we're on the water with the Roche-Posay Racing Team from France, and I'm sitting on their AC40 as we head out for training.
Definitely we've got less money, or less assets, less people.
America's Cup wasn't part of the French culture.
We're doing it our way. We will close the gap.
Before it was not possible.
The semi-finals will be the first step.
France produces some of the greatest offshore sailors on Earth. Multiple round-the-world record holders. And this city on the Atlantic coast of France, Lorient, is where they live, where they train, and where they build their boats.
France does sailing like no other nation. You look around here and you see a thriving sailing ecosystem. This is sailing at its most adventurous, with a wealth of unique skills in building boats to weather the toughest storms and the roughest oceans, a culture of maverick solo sailors, and a rich and open community of shared skills and resources.
Thing is, none of that will actually win you the America's Cup.
And so far, no French team has won the Cup, despite over 50 years of trying. This is the Roche-Posay Racing Team, the French challenger for the 38th America's Cup in Naples next year. This is their second campaign. And this time they have a team made up of Olympic champions and inshore foiling specialists sailing a boat that looks nothing like anything else on the dock.
And that's one of the things I'm interested in understanding. Can this rich culture and expertise in ocean sailing be harnessed to win the America's Cup when the challenges are so different?
And if they can bridge that gap, then does that mean that they're no longer the underdogs? The team is not actually in the centre of Lorient. They're a little way up the river, still in the city, but not quite at its heart. Close enough to draw on everything this place offers, far enough away to do something very different with it.
But the America's Cup is a very different kind of challenge, where offshore racing is all about endurance and fortitude and boats and people being able to stand up to the worst that nature can throw at you. America's Cup is finesse, pure speed, where progress is measured in millimetres rather than nautical miles.
Quentin Delapierre is the skipper of the Roche-Posay Racing Team, and this is his second America's Cup campaign as helm.
This is your base. Well, this is your base. There is your base. Lorient is your base. Lorient is your home. It's not that big. It's difficult for us to kind of get in there without getting in people's way. What have you got going on in here?
Yeah, we just had the setup in Lorient for a few months now. We have the 75 on another place, like getting...
Right. Tucked away. Yeah, no one's told us exactly where that is. That's all secret.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. We have asked, we have begged, we have tried to find out where it is, and they wouldn't tell us. I mean, it's got to be in some sort of big shed. They're going to have to find an enormous place in Lorient. Where on earth could this massive shed and this AC-75 be hiding?
It's quite nice to be in Lorient. A lot of sailing industry here.
Right.
Super easy to sail, like really good weather condition. And we have the office with all the team here.
This might seem like a silly question, but have you been into anybody else's America's Cup base? Because I have, and this is really different. It's really unusual not to have a big gate, a big guard. You have to get the passes, you have to go through security.
I'm happy that it's different.
Okay, yeah, cool.
We don't really care about what is the cup, how do you say, standard.
Ouais.
Like we're doing it our way, and as soon as we will be in Naples, our base will look like for you as a cup team.
You've packed in loads of people. You've got the 40 simulator, the 75 simulator, you've got design teams. You know, we just pulled you out of a meeting in there. You know, everything is happening in a very small space. Come with me just down to the water here.
Yeah, Lorient is a good place for everything around the sea and water.
Right.
And on the La Base, the place called La Base, there is all the offshore team with big multi-hulls, with IMOCA.
I'm guessing that if there's anything you need for the 40, for the 75, from expertise in paint, foil manufacture, anything, it's here, right?
Yeah, kind of. Not everything, but it's quite interesting to be there for this reason.
If you're a young British sailor and you say, I want to get into offshore sailing, number one, learn French. Come here. This is where it's at. Why is a country, and not just a country, but this region, so strong in dinghy sailing, in offshore sailing, but why doesn't it quite work for the America's Cup?
So you want French sailing history now?
Yeah, I do.
Offshore sailing in France is really famous and really powerful because of one man, Eric Tabarly, and it's probably the same in New Zealand with Peter Blake.
French teams have been competing in the America's Cup since 1970, contesting 13 editions, and they've helped shape the modern America's Cup. Baron Marcel Bick, the founder of Bick Pens and Razors, made 4 attempts in the 12-metre class. He was part of the first Challenger Selection Series, the format that became the Louis Vuitton Cup. In 1987, a French team called French Kiss pioneered computer-only yacht design. But although France has continued to develop world-beating solo sailors, record-breaking boats, and round-the-world champion crews, America's Cup success has eluded the nation.
Just looking forward to come back stronger and win this cup one day.
Obviously, in Barcelona, you know, I was watching you along with loads of people watching you, sometimes happy, sometimes disappointed. And let's be honest, probably more disappointed than happy. You know, you guys had a hard time in Barcelona. What did you come away from that learning?
Yeah, I'm not sure it was hard time. It was simply a first campaign.
Okay.
New project, new sponsor, how we can, build a 75, how we can put together 120 people together. And I think we did well overall. Like we won one match race. We had also a technical issue during the other one, and we did mistake as a sailors. But yeah, I think we are in a pretty good shape and a good position this time.
Because you had the sister ship to New Zealand's AC-75, the AC-75 that ultimately went on to defend the Cup successfully. You had, in a sense, you know, an amazing piece of equipment, but I'm guessing maybe not the experience of exactly how to use it?
Yeah, the problem was not how to use the boat. Unfortunately, we were quite compressed in terms of timeline, and so we didn't have the time to have the correct tools at the correct position. So honestly, we used the boat at probably 70%.
Wow,
and
okay.
I think we learned from that, and this time we're super focused to have the right tool at the right place for using the boat at good potential.
This time around, 100%? It's a very different campaign to last time, or are you just gently stepping up each time?
Yeah, I think that's the mindset. Making sure we have a good step forward this time, and we do things in a long-term vision, and I think we're doing well. I'm sure we'll not be at 100% potential this time, but we will close the gap for sure.
Are you saying to me that you are the underdogs here? Are you the underdog?
Yeah, still the underdogs. Like, yeah. You cannot say I'm putting together a cup team and it will happen in a click.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
You have to make sure that you've got good inertia and it will come in the next 5 or 10 years. There is plenty of great things that never happened before in a French Cup, like good design package, good experienced people, 2 campaigns in a row. Also, really good support with our partners and sponsors. So, yeah, it's probably starting now.
The first test on the racecourse for all these teams in the current cycle is the Louis Vuitton 38th America's Cup Preliminary Regatta Sardinia, May 21st to 24th. 5 teams, with youth and women competing against the senior crews for the very first time. Watch the racing live on the America's Cup YouTube and Facebook channels, or on americascup.com.
The teams that have been successful in the America's Cup have been the ones that have passed the knowledge forward. You take Emirates Team New Zealand, building cycle after cycle, improving their skills and an evolution. And that's why for the Roche-Posay Racing Team, staying together as one unit after Barcelona really mattered.
But the America's Cup is a moving target. Every cycle has its own unique demands and challenges. Among the rule changes for AC38, the cyclors have been replaced by battery power. And now each crew must have a female sailor on board. And La Roche-Posay Racing Team have taken the opportunity to draw from France's offshore talent pool by recruiting Amélie Grassi, a sailor who has taken a very French route to the top. Her career has included the Class 40, IMOCA sailing and old teams.
I don't know how it works in other countries, but in France we don't really mix the path of offshore racing world and the America's Cup. So I think I'm used to sail really fast foiling boats. It's always the same spirit, you just adapt to the environment you're sailing in. But I guess there are many skills from my experience on big offshore racing boats which I can put in the America's Cup campaign.
Right, the one similarity that I really do see with the offshore that you do and the America's Cup is there's an awful lot of looking at a long list of numbers flashing up.
So as an offshore sailor, I think I'm used to spend a lot of time with the design team and the technical team.
Developing and feeding back.
Yeah, and as soon as you are racing, you have to be really self-sufficient because you are not allowed to get a lot of help from shore. So you have to deeply understand how the boat works, which are the constraints. You have to analyze your own data while racing if you don't want to adapt the settings. I think being a sailor which is passionate about engineering and performance, it's valuable in an America's Cup campaign.
You must feel like a sailor here, an offshore sailor here. Anything is possible in Lorient. You've got so much good stuff. An Olympic sailor here, anything is possible. You've got industry, you've got support, you've got so much success. Why do you think France is so good in the dinghies, so good offshore, and not quite there with the America's Cup? Big question, and I expect a big answer.
How many hours? First of all, I think it's more about the culture, maybe. Yeah. America's Cup wasn't part of the French culture for a while, so both of my parents have been professional sailors, they've been racing, and they don't even know where was the previous America's Cup.
Right.
So it's definitely not in the French culture.
Yeah. So maybe that's it. Maybe France is all about the offshore, so there just isn't much room.
Yeah, it's more about dinghy and offshore, but I think that's a really good base because if you are good at dinghy and offshore racing, then if you mix up everything and you work a lot, I think you could be great in an America's Cup campaign. So.
Yeah. But just give me some sense, as a sailor, how different is it when you step on board an AC75? Do you sit in it and go, oh, this is just an ordinary boat? Or do you think, I've gone from an optimist to a spaceship and I have to speak a totally new language?
Basically, that's a spaceship because I think I will have many screens and I will push buttons, which is definitely not the same as feeling the wind
in your face,
looking away, having ropes.
I'm on my yacht and I'm used to seeing wind speed, boat speed, wind angle, and maybe I've got like 4, 5, 6 numbers that I'm trying to look at. Just give me an idea. What are we talking? 10 numbers? 15 numbers? What do you sort of go?
Yeah, I still don't know how many numbers, but much more than 10.
But not a million miles away from being tucked underneath the cockpit of an IMOCA looking at all those screens.
Exactly.
So this team is drawing on a rich heritage of offshore sailing that is everywhere here in Lorient. It's not just about the sailing skills, it's about the engineering, the appreciation of building a team, harnessing all those different components together. And that is what they've done. But Amélie identified a problem. How do you get the America's Cup to embed itself in the nation in the same way that their passion is for offshore sailing and the success that it brings? How does this team go about harnessing that same level of enthusiasm that could potentially carry them to victory in the America's Cup?
Antoine Carraz is the technical director of La Roche-Posay Racing Team. Like Amélie Grassi, he has a background in offshore sailing, but has been drawn to the challenge of winning the Auld Mug for France.
I've been in Luna Ross's shed. It was bigger.
Yeah, no, this one is only for storage. It's when we came back from Barcelona.
Yeah.
We just set up this tent.
I mean, I see the mask. Can we have
We have two masts. So this is the one we used last time. And then we have a spare mast. We are working a little bit on this one. To have exactly the same mast. The idea is if you have an issue on one mast,
you can swap.
You can swap at night. All the container will go to Naples in more or less 1 month.
Yeah.
So we start to remove all the. You can see it's all part of the boat. So
I was just going to ask.
Yeah.
Right.
This one was a part of the cockpit.
Right.
As you know, we used to have force cycler, and now.
See how heavy that? Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow. There's nothing in that at all. No. And so this is the aluminium honeycomb.
Yeah, light and very strong.
Ooh.
So yeah. So here we have a test bench. So as you see, it's quite big.
Look at the size of that. Yeah. Oh my God.
So yes, it's quite big because we can put 20 tons on this length. Right. This is the ram of the FCS to move the foils.
Right.
So that it's the big.
On a 40 or a 75?
75.
That's the 75.
Yeah. So on the 40 you have one small, on the 75 you have two big one like this.
Right.
It's fully aluminum and titanium, and I think it can go to 25 tons each one.
Oh, these are the batteries.
Yes, this is the famous batteries.
The famous batteries, yeah. So this is for the 40, right?
No, it's the same. The battery are one design for the 40, but also one design for the 75.
Right. So okay.
Before the sailor was producing energy for the sail trimming, but the foil arm and also the trim of the flap on the rudder was already on battery.
Right.
We discovered that the cycler were only producing 10% of the energy we have on board. So we replace a fork cycler. It's half of a battery.
Oh really?
Yeah. So,
oh wow!
Sorry,
Cyclaws. I was here as your team were kind of heading out in the AC40. There's a lot of young faces, right? And you don't see the Frank Camasses, those older guys. With the technology and the style of sailing being so different from the past, is this why we're seeing that old guard stepping back and the young kids coming through?
Sailing used to be a job of experience in the past.
And a game of patience.
A game of patience, and you have to sail a lot, and every day you sail, you learn a small stuff. And now I think with the simulator and everything, they improve very, very fast. And sometimes we have very young people with no experience. They arrive in the simulator, and after 1 or 2 hours, they are very good.
Right.
And before it was not possible. You have to start you're optimist at 6 and maybe at 20 you start to be a good sailor, but now yes, we have some, because it's another topic.
Every team in this competition has a specific theory as to how to be the most successful, how to win the event. And it's the differences between each of those theories that makes the America's Cup so compelling. And La Roche-Posay, they have built their crew around what they think is the best theory, the best winning formula. But there is somebody on their team that has won the Cup before, but not for their native France. Philippe Presti was the winning coach for USA in 2010, 2013, before then doing 2 cycles with Luna Rossa. But he is now back with the French flag on his back as sporting director for La Roche-Posay Racing Team. How does this team seem different to you? Everybody's got their own sort of personality. America's Cup teams are no different. Where do you see the differences?
Definitely, we've got less money overall, so less assets, less people. From the sailing team perspective, what I see is because we don't have 10 people taking care about their stuff, they have to be self-sufficient. So we bringing information and they process them themselves, and that's very different than where I come from.
When I'm watching the 40s in the preliminary regatta, and when the fans are watching it, just give me an idea, what could you see here that we, when we're watching this on the TV screen, should say, oh, that's good sailing? And what can you see that we should say, they're losing a little ground there? How can we decipher it?
So basically, those conditions, every maneuver is a 50-50 you end up foiling. It's we're talking about 5.5 knots true wind speed. Some of the jibe, we were jibing at 5.5 knots. Imagine 5 knots on the water. Yeah. And the boat goes at between 25 and 30 knots, creating its own apparatus.
wind,
So it's a kind of a wind machine.
So when it's light, every foiling tack and jibe...
Keeping on the foil is just at the top of the list, I tell you. And that's... VMG comes very, very late. Another trick also is to look at... I was looking at from the drone perspective is what the foil does when it hits the water. I don't know if you look at a couple of maneuvers, you will see a big bang. You see that?
Yeah.
Here we're talking about the reattachment. We're talking about how much disturbance you do on the flow. So the quicker you reattach, and here there's a bubble. See the bubble? We went too high. Not us, but autopilot went too high.
Yeah. So that consistency of ride height is something that we should be watching for.
Yeah.
Big splashes, that's a thumbs down.
Yeah, in the lighter is all about finesse and is a dance, slow dancing.
So what's the maneuver that's the hardest one to pull off? Let's say you got 10 knots. Staying on the foils.
10 knots, there's no maneuver. You can do whatever.
Right.
10 knots, you're racing in 10 knots.
Yeah, right.
Your speed is your fuel.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's something very, very different with this type of boat.
The core fundamentals of sailing are obviously still the same. You've got to find the breeze, you've got to use the breeze, you've got to turn it into power and speed, and then the rich get richer. But there must be something different, whether it's in what you do on the water or how you make the boat or how you approach the competition, because for this team, for this nation, there's so much success in Olympics, in offshore, but there isn't in the America's Cup. What is that difference that means that the success in those worlds don't just instantly transfer?
That's $1 million question.
Yeah.
But it comes to the $1 million you get.
Right.
So offshore sailing, we're talking about offshore sailing. In this place, it's very successful indeed. And it comes from the history of the French, how the French grew up into the sailing. Eric Tabarly, which had the memorial, and that was really the beginning of the story. He won transatlantic, he beat British, and there was this big story and big with the man alone against the sea, super tough. I was totally a fan, and really I went sailing thinking of that's what I want to do, and I ended up somewhere else. But the media and the public and in France, when you talk to someone and say, what's sailing? They're going to talk about Vendée Globe, just because that's our culture. There's a lot of small company that can sponsor a sailor and get a return because you tell a story. When you sail around the world and you finish last, that's an adventure. America's Cup is totally different. You're second, you're not existing.
Nothing.
The way to win the cup is either buy the best stuff like the Swiss did. You buy teams and everything. You got the money. We don't have that. It's not going to happen. You go like Oracle. Oracle, you find a wedge. You find and you heat it until if that's really. And I was on the team, so I know exactly what happened. So that's the way. And there's another way is like Team New Zealand did. Basically, they didn't. The first time they were not at the level. The second time they grew up, they make good people improve and they just layer by layer accept that the first time is not a good time, but the second time we're losing better, and eventually at one stage you win the thing. So in my mind, our vision should be this one. That's the only way we can at one stage be competitive, and when you're competitive you can toss the coin and eventually make it.
So you guys are really playing the long game.
That's my goal.
One of the things we keep hearing from this team is that they're underdogs, that this cup is a step, not the destination. But I don't think it's that simple. The man with the big picture view is team CEO Stéphan Kandler.
So in the agreement, in the protocol, you guys get more training days than the other teams. based on where everybody finished in Barcelona. Some people need to play catch-up, some people already have an advantage. So there's a trying of levelling the field. But I've spoken to pretty much every single team who have all said the same thing. We're the underdogs. Even New Zealand, we're the underdogs. Oh, you know, we're the underdogs. Why do the teams really push, including yourself? No, we're the underdogs. What is it? Why do you want that label?
But basically, being an underdog means a lot of things. It depends where you want to, whether you want to avoid to put pressure on yourself and on the team. I think that's the main reason why we go that way. To be honest, it's a question of experience. In the America's Cup with these AC setup 75, you need really experience. There's no question about that. And I think since boats are flying, you need a different approach, and you need more time of work on the water to get these boats up to speed. And then once you get to that level, then comes the game of racing against each other on those boats, and you cannot make any mistakes at those speeds. So I think in this cycle, lots of people and teams changed in terms of skippers, crews, and so on.
Oh, there's a big swap going on,
And I think this puts a lot of pressure on the different people. And it's a big responsibility, I think, for the people on the boat. And we realized, Bruno and I, that it was not an easy game.
So it's an active decision. You want the sailors to feel as if, don't worry, we're playing the long game.
Yes, usually I'm not very patient in general, but I have to learn to be patient. But yeah, it's a fact that we need to be patient, and we need to build a team. We have young talents coming up. That's why we created the academy. That's why we are sailing in other racing like SailGP, ETF. We try to sail as much as we can because we need to build a full team, not only sailors, also technicians, engineers. And I remember when I did the America's Cup in 2007, and when I was a sailor, you could take a world match racing champion and bring him on the boat and do the America's Cup, and he could do a good result.
Yeah.
Now it's impossible. You need people who are focused on foil sailing, and I think Team New Zealand has achieved that better than any other team, and we are all underdogs.
This philosophy that you're outlining, you've been successful because I've heard it from everybody. I've heard it from the sailors that we've spoken to. I've heard it from the support staff, from the Boatyard. Everybody has mentioned those two things. One, which is, it's not about today, it's about tomorrow, it's about the next cycle. And the second one is, New Zealand is the model.
Yeah.
I guess my question is if it's always about the future, if it's always about the next cycle, when is it going to be about this one? When do you know this is the one, guys, now is the time for pressure?
I think, I mean, it doesn't mean we are not ambitious and that we are not trying to win the next one. It's not the point. But we know that the road is long. We know that Team New Zealand has won the last 3 America's Cups, so you cannot deny the fact that they are the team to beat, and they are in the final on top of that, so which basically makes their life easier. But I think it will depend a lot on how you will manage to put this team together and how efficient they will be in the future. So again, I'm not saying that we are not trying to win it next time. I'm just saying that it's a difficult path. You have to be very humble. It's more the way I would see it and present it. And remember that the America's Cup is also changing at the same time with the partnership, fleet racing. I think now we are going to enter into a new era where the teams will probably be there in the longer term, like it happens in Formula One, for example. And I think we are closer and closer to what the Formula One game is.
So what do you need from Naples? What will you go, Naples was a success because?
You know, France has never reached the final of the Louis Vuitton Cup. So yeah, going into the semi-finals will be the first step, and going to the final of the Louis Vuitton Cup would be a great achievement to start with. Because we have to put some sports results or objectives, but then we know everything can happen. For the first time, to be honest, France is at the same time, started more or less at the same time as the big teams like Prada or Luna Rossa or Team New Zealand. So my point is that at least we started at the same time, which was not the case last time, and which was not the case in many, many other French challenges in the past. And I think on top of that, it's the second round for us. So it looks very good, and we can be ambitious, but then it will depend on the sailors and the whole team for sure.
It's incredible to be here and see up close the Roche-Posay Racing Team here in Lorient. This is somewhere that I've known for many years, and I've got used to the way of operating here, the way that the teams, the bases, everything's open. You can just wander down to the pontoon. Hell, you can probably climb onto the boats if you wanted to. But that's not the way that the America's Cup is. But that is the way that this French Challenge are operating. If you were going to sum up this event in one word, it's always secrecy and playing games with each other. It's not the French way, and so it's not the way of La Roche-Posay Racing Team. They've decided completely to be very French, very Lorient. I mean, when we turned up, there, right in the corner, is their AC-75 simulator. Later on, we were told, you can't be filming that, but it's in a glass room, in a glass building. I fancied going for a quick ride in the AC-40. I asked, there was a shrug, and you get to jump in. They've embraced not only the underdog spirit, but this feeling of it's sailing, it's life, it's an attitude, and we're just going to roll with it and see how far we can go. If you did that in the old America's Cup, it would be suicidal. You wouldn't get anywhere. But perhaps in this modern era with the ACP and this knowledge that the event has got some certainty, some continuity, that the teams are all agreeing together, maybe it's a smart play. Maybe you can now say, okay, the decisions that we're making now are not going to give us the benefits this time around, but AC39, AC40, that's when we're going to start to see it. So rather than La Roche-Posay Racing Team seeming laid back, actually it's cunning, it's clever. They are emulating the team that they think has got the winning formula, and potentially it's going to pay off. One thing that I keep coming back to is La Roche-Posay Racing Team's insistence that they are the underdog in this competition. You look at their lineup and they've got gold medalists coming in on the trimming and on the helming. They've got some of the most experienced America's Cup foil trimmers in the game. And then Quentin Delapierre as head skipper. He's so precise in leading that team. They've got experienced coaching talent that knows how to win. The Boatyard is functioning well, everything's efficient, and they've got a really precise long-term plan. Plus, they get more sailing days than anybody else, and their secret weapon, of course, their AC-75 is the exact copy of Emirates Team New Zealand's AC-75, or at least it was in Barcelona. I don't think that this team is an underdog. I think that this team has actually got some really strong pieces on this board. I think they could be pretty powerful.